Welcome back to the Parentreneur podcast. We are your hosts, Jake and Savannah Haynes. And last week we went over the story of my business, a B2C business, and just kind of how that started and where we're at today. And this week we're going to be going over Jake's business, B2B, and yeah, excited to share and rehear his whole process and story from that. So. Before you go into Pilot West, though, I actually want you to recap your entrepreneurial journey, like through your whole life. So even when you were younger, all the little businesses and little things that you started or wanted to start, or go into that if you can remember any of that timeline.
That's really interesting. I don't feel like I'm one of those people that I can fully relate to when I see entrepreneurs who, are now billionaires and they're going, well, yeah, I was selling something since I was little. In fact, the funny thing is I hated sales when I was a teenager. I literally thought the last thing in the world that I want to do is sales. And that ended up being my career in learning how to grow startups through sales and leading sales organizations. So
ironic.
Very ironic. Yeah. Don't ever say never, but there's a few things I do. I was always mowing lawns. Mm-hmm. I was like detailing cars. Mm-hmm. There's a few pickup jobs I was doing. I was always working since I was 14. So, I haven't stopped working since I was a teenager. Even coming back from college, I would get, fun money by working in my dad's, the apartment complex he worked at and ran maintenance for. I would do, grass and just general maintenance stuff for cash. And so I can't fully relate. I've never been someone who was always selling stuff or was focused on arbitrage since they were a toddler. But it was ingrained in me very early on that I wanted to own my own business. I wanted to do my own thing. And I think it just grew up being in a lower middle to middle class family, seeing my parents are very skilled individuals, but just not in well leveraged opportunities. What does that really mean? It just means that they get paid less than I think what their skills are actually worth in different areas. And I saw my dad go through layoffs, and I just thought to myself, like, if I can do a job, if I could have a career, I want to ensure that I could at least control some of it and make as much money as I can to do whatever I want, because we didn't have a ton of it. And being able to hopefully have my own agency around my career and around what I wanted to do and not experience the layoffs that my dad did. Ironically enough, spoiler alert, I had more layoffs than my dad did, but it all turned out to the best.
You use them as leverage.
Yeah, that's another crazy part of the story. And I'm still trying to figure out how far I want to go back, because I want to keep this still brief and to the point. But for those who haven't heard any of my content prior, my background, I started in sales and software sales. It was very good to me for a while. I got into some smaller startups, and I just kept experiencing layoff after layoff. So I was a senior salesperson, got laid off, even though I won accolades at this company. I got laid off around the COVID time. I got COVID, very unfair incident, but got laid off. Leveraged that opportunity into getting a manager opportunity that actually wasn't posted at a company, but just having conversations with them. We found out a need. I said, hey, let me be your sales manager. I became the sales manager. That turned into a sales director. That eventually I got laid off again because they moved things back overseas, which was unfortunate. Because it was an international startup.
Reviews.
Yeah, helped the company 8x over the course of 2 years. So we did big things and had great references. But yeah, they just moved in a different direction with my whole side of the organization. That whole part of the organization eventually got laid off. And then the third round, I got involved with it seemed like a fledgling startup that really had a lot of promise. It was just, I'll hold my tongue about that one. It just wasn't a good fit. Nonetheless, we moved on. It was very mutual. And then I ended up with my last company, another international startup out of Israel. And it was actually a great company. I actually thought for a moment, maybe I found my place where I could see me having a career here for 10, 15 years. Me and the CEO got along very well. I was kind of like co-CEO. I was kind of like the CEO. I think even the board said that about me, is that I was kind of like a co-CEO to the US side of the business, and they were trying to get into the US. So it was really instrumental, not only just leading the sales, but also there's a big part of it marketing and conferences and leading the product development. And we saw really huge numbers. We're about to 10x anything that we did the month prior, and then we got laid off. There's this huge board dispute. After I just flew out to New York City and met with the board, everything went well, but then just imploded between the CEO and the board, and lawsuits were flying.
You still don't know what happened.
Still don't know what happened. I think it's still in lawsuits, active lawsuits. So I don't know the full details. All I know is that it blew up, and eventually, we got laid off pretty quickly when that happened. And then the company essentially just dissolved. And that was tough because I really enjoyed that. I loved all my coworkers. I loved the company. It was really interesting. Salt of the earth clients. I could be here for a long term. And then it was brutal that it got shut down. Everyone got let go. And then like prospects were calling us like for the closing meetings for these really big deals. Calling all my guys being like, hey, we're ready to sign, we're ready to go, and we don't have a job with them. We don't work with them anymore. So that was brutal.
And 2 of those layoffs were with my sister's husband.
Yes.
So both our families got laid off at the same time, and my sister's my co-founder for my business.
Yes.
So walking through seasons of that together was also kind of crazy. Side note.
Yeah. And so, ironically enough, right before that, in January, I got laid off in February. In January, I was speaking to someone I consider a mentor of mine and just talking about like, what are some opportunities out there in the market? I think I was talking to him about how in the growth side of the businesses that I work for, with startups that I joined, I could oftentimes see that there wasn't a lot of congruence or unifying action between technology and between sales. What does that mean? The people who are building the software and the people who are selling it are not aligned. And why that's problematic is because the salespeople are interfacing directly with your clients. They're getting feedback. They're demoing the product. And at times, the engineers and the product people can really make a product in a silo, meaning it's not off of fully fledged feedback, or it's not complete, or they have things that they think they should build into the product that just aren't being requested by the customer. And so I saw that, and I was kind of having a conversation with a mentor of mine who he mentioned, hey, you should work for MVPs and take your skills of sales and take those MVPs of like fledgling startup software ideas and sell it, pre-sell it, validate it, and help them get their product off the ground. I thought it was a really great idea. And that's the business that I chose to pursue, actually. And for those who don't know, MVP is a minimum viable product. So when a software gets created, there's usually something that's called alpha. Alpha is like the first iteration of the product, which is usually very janky, usually with a small amount of people who actually get access to it, just to kind of get the workflows down. Beta is like we're almost about ready to launch it, and it'll open up to a little bit larger group of beta users. And then the MVP gets launched. And again, MVP is what's the ground floor? What's the minimum that we can build and launch and generate revenue on for this software? So again, it's a really bare bones thing. So why that's such a big deal for enterprises and software companies is because, again, if you don't have the right feedback, if you're not talking to your customers in the right way, if the company isn't fully aligned, it is very, very, very common that a company will put, let's say, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, into an idea with resources that they put, whether that be talent or money or development, of like paying a software development company to build, to launch it to either nobody, or they launch it and it doesn't hit with their demographic of who they're selling to because it actually doesn't solve a real problem. So that was what I was trying to help solve. And in January, I talked to my mentor. I was like, you know what? I want to explore this a little bit more. So I created this cadence where I reached out to VPs and C-suites of large enterprise companies to just get their feedback, to just hear like 6 or 7 questions of like, hey, how are you solving for this now? What's experiences where this has gone poorly? How do you solve for it now, knowing that after that thing has gone poorly? Like just really understanding what is the workflow? How do you make decisions? What is the current problems with the existing way that you launch new products? And just trying to understand where the market was, what is telling me if it was a good idea or not. And so I started doing that. The conversation I had with my mentor was in January. I started actually doing the customer interviews in February. I'm looking at my notebook here because I actually wrote down every key thing that's happened in my business since the moment I got laid off and started the business. I've kept an Excel file of every single date and major thing that's happened so that I could reference it either for my purposes or to talk about it in this kind of format. So I'll be looking at my notes a little bit. And so, yeah, January is when I had that conversation with a mentor. February is when I started doing customer interviews and actually just talking to people, which we'll talk about. That's a really great idea if you have any idea or any service that you want to validate. And then February, at the end of February, we got the text message from the new CEO, who I didn't know it then, was coming on to the company that I was working for. And there were, he essentially helps companies that are in big trouble. So he texted me, said, hey, there's this huge dispute. We're not getting more funding. It may not look like it. I'm trying to figure out what I can. I'll let you know more details as it comes about.
That's extremely nerve-wracking.
Yeah, like for 2 days as we try to figure out what's going to happen. And this is right at the end of February. So like we're rolling right into March, end of month. And then we get the text that I got let go via text message, via WhatsApp. And no severance.
Yeah, that was...
So...
It was, at that point, being the 4th layoff, I don't know how you felt about it, but for me, it was kind of like almost like just numb.
Oh, yeah.
Like rather than like stressing, it was just like, oh man, here again.
Yeah. It's like the dog.
Okay,
this is fine.
Here we go.
Yeah.
What are we going to do now? And so then you were faced with the decision of what am I going to do now? And
well, ironically enough, I was praying about this. I think the day before, I was literally praying. I was having these customer interviews. Some of this information was really coming back with a lot of positive, like, hey, there might be something here. But I hired a ton of friends and people I've worked with in the past to work under me. And I didn't want to, leave them for this business. I felt like it wasn't right. And so ironically enough, the day before I was praying, all right, Lord, like if this is something that you want me to do, make this extremely clear that this is the path that you have for me. Mm-hmm. And then the next day I got laid off.
Yeah. But it still wasn't extremely clear. If you remember, because we're in the position that we're in with 3 children. So at the time we had 3, and you have the pressure to provide for our family. Mm-hmm. So you have this great business idea, but then you're faced with another layoff. And with the last layoffs, you started applying to jobs like it was your full-time job. You're like, I'm going to be in my office.
And I had severance with those layoffs.
With severance. And you were in your office, basically work hours, applying, religiously. And so it's like, okay, 4th time around, flex that unfortunate muscle.
Yeah.
And, do I start applying again? I remember having that conversation because it's scary. That is the thing with being a parent entrepreneur. You're faced with so much more pressure. It's not just you as a bachelor or even us where I could work and, float us until you figure it out.
We weren't dual income.
Yeah, there was just so much pressure. So you were still like, should I apply?
Yeah.
And I just remember saying, like, you were asking for the Lord to make it clear. And I think he's made it pretty darn clear.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it took us a couple days to really decide, is this the right choice together? And we were like, yeah, how can we make it work
Yeah.
for you to start it? Because I think that's what he's showing us, and that's the move.
And it was tempting. There's
Yeah.
jobs I'd be looking at. I'm like, should I apply? Should I apply? I didn't though. I didn't apply for any jobs. I was like, I'm going to figure this out because in working with startups, I did have enough experience to know that in 6 months, I could help turn around most businesses. In 6 months, if I really give a concerted effort towards a goal, the product is good, and I have enough resources behind me, I knew that within 6 months I could figure most things out. And so that was kind of our goals. Like, let's scrap together everything we can to get 6 months of runway. And
Well, talk a little bit about how we did that. What are some of the choices that we made earlier on so that we were able to float until that 6-month mark?
yeah, well, for one, we don't carry, I mean, not to say our expenses are low, but we didn't get into a ton of lifestyle creep, or at least that couldn't be stopped. We had a decent amount of savings. We had a good tax return. So I think we had like 15,000 in savings, maybe a little bit more. I think together is like 15,000 with the tax return and another 5 something, 6, 7,000. And then we had a HELOC, which is, for those who don't know, home equity line of credit, from our rental property. So
Our first house we bought in 2022?
No, 29.
21.
I think we closed on in
21?
2020.
Did we?
Oh, maybe it was 21.
I think it was 21.
Yep.
So we bought our first house in 21. And we actually went into a new neighborhood in the first round of sales because you get instant equity. Essentially, they always increase the prices with each phase that they release in a new build neighborhood. So we got in at the first round. We knew that we would have equity, so we knew we'd be positive on it. And that was our first house. We lived in it for a year. We thought we were going to live in it longer, but it ended up, we had the opportunity to move to a different neighborhood. And so that became our rental property.
Yeah, we made like $100,000 of equity within a year. And so we're like, hey, we want to turn this into a rental property. We thought maybe this would be like 4 to 7 years, but we can do it now. So why not? So we took a home equity line of credit towards that amount to pay for our down payment. And we had like a good bit left over still of that equity. And that's what we used to float the rest of it. Essentially as like a small business loan to myself.
So we took our expenses, shaved them down to the bare bones, plus high quality food.
Yeah.
Because truly crunchy.
Yeah.
We cannot skimp on the, like, high quality food. Clean food is an essential for us. So down to the essentials plus high quality food, and divided that out, the number that we had, and said, how many months can this make us?
Yeah.
And it was 6 months.
I think it was technically 7 months is what made it, like 7.5 months.
Okay.
And we actually took our first paycheck from my business 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Are you sure? We were down to the wire. We were about to run out of money, actually.
I think we had one more month left.
Okay.
And we,
Really?
yeah.
I remember
we had
it
one more
being
month
like,
left.
this is the last week.
It would have been the last
Okay.
month, I believe.
Okay,
So yeah,
gotcha.
I think, so right on 6 months, like we hit the mark. And just to show you again, with what I wrote down, it was not a straightforward linear path. And so in February, I started doing customer interviews and got laid off, right? So by March, I'm like, we're fully committing to this. We're going to make this happen. And so I continue to run the interviews because if you've seen that cadence, I've posted about it before. It's a marketing style interview, but also if there's opportunity there within the marketing interview, you will have an opportunity to sell to them if the need is there and if your solution actually solves what they're looking to do. And so I was beginning to build a little bit of prospective client list, just continue to run with that and see if I get referrals and just keep that cadence moving as I try to figure out what the sales motion, marketing motion was going to look like. And a friend came to me as well, because I was going after that business, and a friend came to me and said, hey, I have a bunch of SDRs, which are salespeople who make cold calls in Pakistan. I forgot how he came up with the idea, but he's like, you could essentially outsource salespeople to other companies. That's a long story short. I essentially was like, you know what? I'll go after both these businesses because I know I can lead salespeople. This is easy. And I'll go after the MVP idea. And my goal was, let's go after both and I'll kill one of them after a few months. So that also happened in March where my friend told me about that. I was like, let's figure this out. I was going after both business ideas, which again, we'll talk about in regards to mistakes that was made throughout this journey. But I was able to get my first client at the end of April. So this idea came about. My friend said, hey, there's these Pakistani reps. He made the introduction. I hired these people, which was very cheap. He had an introduction of who I could sell to. So essentially, he gave me the business idea, the model, and the first client. Wasn't a great fit in regards to how their business operates and just kind of their technology, but it was really interesting. The SDRs were incredible. They're so hardworking. They put in way more volume than any other rep I've ever seen. So that meant that, in theory, what my business was if you're a software company, I could come in and instead of you hiring a full-time US hire, I could hire 3 for less cost in Pakistan, and they usually do 2 or 3x the volume of one person. That means that they were doing like 9x the volume of a US hire, and they're less cost. So it was a really interesting idea. Again, both of these ideas were actually really good ideas. Mm-hmm. And considering that a lot of startups and enterprises were trimming down their cost and trying to keep up their sales efficiency, it wasn't a bad idea. So I continued on with that idea, got my first client in April after really starting it in March. And in May, here's just a mistake I want to talk about. I wasted $5,000 on a LinkedIn automation company who essentially said, hey, we'll guarantee that we'll get you a certain amount of clients through LinkedIn automation. Let us do it. And so I paid that for 2 months. Ended up really not going anywhere. And that's again, add that to the mistakes pile that we will talk about later on. So I wasted some money on some contractors that I shouldn't have in May. In June, as I'm still trying to do these interviews and still trying to figure out like my first client with the MVP side, nothing's really going. There's a lot of really good feedback from people. Introductions are happening. I just can't seem to find right time, right place of, okay, you have the pain, you have the urgency, you want to do this thing now, you're launching a product. The timing was off, but I had dozens of really good interviews and feedback. It was almost all positive, heading towards the right direction of, hey, yeah, validating a software idea is a really interesting business model. But in June, I talked to my now co-founder, Adam, and I was like, hey, why, instead of it just being a company that validates software ideas and pre-sales and helps, unite technology with sales, why don't we just do that and then also build the product as well? So we could be a software engineering company that works with startups, validates ideas, gets it off the ground, makes sure that it has legs, has real potential, and then builds the thing, right? Which again, really good idea, if I do say so myself. And that was in June. And after a while, I was able to convince Adam, yes, to join me. And so he was still working, he had a great job, making good money, but he was kind of bored of it. And so we kept talking about it of like, how can we get clients? And we were able to like do some just like grassroots stuff. We posted on Hacker News in the wanted section of like looking for software developers. We posted our services. We got on a marketplace. I talked about Bark for software development. We asked around our network, and in August, through our network, we were able to close our first client. Actually, still is our client today on retainer. And that was the kind of the first validation. Actually, he was going to hire us to launch and validate a new product for us. And he was going to write a check for $90,000, which back then for us was like insane. So we were starting to get validation of like, hey, someone's going to pay us close to 6 figures to launch a new product and to validate a new product. We ended up, his main business that he has needed more attention on the sales and technology side. So me and Adam joined him in a different capacity, but still in uniting kind of the tech and sales more as advisors. And yeah, that was our first client. So it was really exciting. Though throughout that whole time, we were having more conversations with non-technical business owners. And when we got our first client with Todd, ironically enough, we were kind of losing the idea of validating and building MVPs was losing its luster. Because in having all these conversations, one, when we talk to enterprise people like CPOs or chief product officers or VPs of products, they would say that they had the pain, but no one was really willing to raise their hand and say, yes, I have that pain and I need that help. Because why? They're the ones who are supposed to be doing that in their businesses. So if they bring on a consultant or a contractor to say, I'm going to have them do this thing for me, validate this idea, then it could easily point back to them and go, well, why aren't you doing that? So that was the challenge. It was a good idea, but being able to get that in an enterprise company was a lot of red tape, and you would potentially be making the person who's trying to get you into the company look worse. So then we looked at startups, and we had a ton of conversations with startups of people who had ideas, but ultimately everyone has ideas until you say it's going to be 6 figures to launch this idea off the ground, and then it's mostly tire kickers. But what we found in that time of June to August and talking to a bunch of people was we found that there's just a lot of really interesting business owners who had interesting technical problems in their business and bottlenecks and legacy software that just provided so much more of a tangible result. Like instead of, getting this AI chatbot off the ground, everyone wants to do an AI startup, and it's just like a marketing term at this point, and we're just kind of rolling our eyes after every time we would talk to somebody and they'd be like, I have this AI idea. It's like it's just nonsense. But we really found it exciting when we would meet with business owners who had 7-figure businesses, but found that they were limiting their growth based off of not being able to have tech that supports their operations and makes it ultimately more efficient. And so that's really kind of where we're like, we could continue down this path of doing MVPs and launching these products for other companies, but we really enjoyed working with small business owners. And so as of getting our first client in August, we kind of decided, yeah, let's kind of go all in on that. So it was our next iteration from, okay, I want to take this MVP validation company and unite the growth and the tech of a company. And then it went into, well, I'm going to take it and we'll just do full service. We'll build the MVP, we'll validate it, we'll do everything for you, to then going, there's definitely some opportunity there. There's some legs there to that idea, but it just wasn't what we liked. In fact, going back to the sales outsourcing side, that was working well, but I just didn't like it. In fact, a few months before the customer fired me, I told them like, hey, I don't think this is going to work. For one, it wasn't going to work with how their business operated. But secondarily, I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy being a middle manager, sales manager as a business owner. I didn't enjoy it at all. But what me and my co-founder Adam really enjoyed was we really enjoyed working with small business owners and rebuilding legacy applications and making their businesses better. Like, it was so tangible when you can talk to a business and build a piece of software that would help save their employees like 2 to 3, 4 hours a day of having to do manual tasks.
I feel like this is such a good example of like listening to the market.
Oh yeah.
Starting like from your original idea to what's actually happening. Like, you can, as you tell the story, you can see all the pieces, but if you go from A to D, it's like,
yeah,
how did you get there? Which it's a compliment to you. Like, you weren't so emotionally tied to your first idea, just like banging your head against the wall, making it work. Not that it wouldn't have worked, but just there were other things that it was just, again, the market was just taking you somewhere a little bit different. And that's what's been successful.
Yeah, that's what we'll talk about that later, because I have a bad section and a good section, but that's exactly it. We'll talk about that here in a second. And so yeah, so we went all in on, I killed off the B2B sales outsourcing and said, you know what, I'm moving on from this idea. I let the employees know. I focused fully on the sales engineering side of the business. And then, yeah, we iterated to, hey, let's work with more businesses. This is really tangible. This is really fun. These are really interesting problems. And it's not a bunch of tire kickers. These people are in real need of, they're in pain and they need help. And it's not just like a cool chat bot. It's like real tangible software problems. And so we went all in on that. And that was our next iteration. So again, as you can see, it's not this iterative process of like very linear. It's like just kind of going in loops and seeing what takes and what doesn't take, and see what you like and what you don't like. And it's like that iterative process is not only what the market's telling you, but also what do you enjoy and what are you really good at, right? And so ultimately, that's, long story short, that's where the business ended up landing. Was we rebranded and officially launched in the middle of August. So again, in June, Adam joined me and we were doing more of just like market research. In August, we rebranded and launched the company, and Adam quit his full-time job in September. And in 4.5 months, we did $218,000 in billings. 75% of that was cash collected. And this year, we'll do, twice to 4 times that, depending on how some things shake out in regards to the marketing side. And so all that to say, the path to $0 to $218,000, as you can tell, was not a linear one. There are things that were bad. There's some things that were good, and there's some things that I would definitely have done differently in retrospect. And here are a few things.
Can I interrupt you before you start on your list?
Sure.
Something we totally should have said at the beginning of the podcast was introducing him. If this is your first time listening, we've got our 3-month-old here with us. He's our 4th boy, and he only sleeps on me. So he's going to join us for the foreseeable future, and you'll hear his little squeaks and squeals.
Welcome to the Parentreneur lifestyle, yes, where Savannah does nothing on her own. She doesn't sleep on her own. She doesn't eat on her own. She doesn't work on her own.
I've got my little Velcro buddy here.
Yeah.
So that's what you're hearing if you're not watching the video.
Yes.
And if you are, this is our 4th son. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Go into your do's and don'ts, good and bad.
Yes. So again, the path was not linear. There's some things that, in regards to the path of going from $0 to $218,000, was not linear. There's some bad things that I shouldn't have done and that I knew better. There's some things that were good that I would have done more of, and there's some things that I would have done differently in retrospect. But it's all a process, right? So the first bad thing that I did was I hired people when I didn't really have an identity for a company. I had an idea, but having identity in a really solidified offering of your product is completely different. So that's why I'd say, like, be product agnostic when you have a new idea, because if you can articulate a mission for who you want to serve and what you want to solve for them, that'll kind of keep you on the right path. But you can't say like, I'm going to launch this product and it's going to do X, Y, and Z thing, because the market may tell you, hey, we don't want that thing. We don't care about that at all. But instead, if you're like, I want to help moms who have e-commerce sites market their Shopify stores on Facebook, it's like, okay, or get more clients or sell more units of whatever they have. It's like, okay, it's really tangible. The service could be different depending on what they actually need and what the market might tell you. But at least your mission is you've articulated who you want to serve. You've briefly given an idea of the value that you could provide. And then you can actually create a service that solves for it when you have real conversations. So part of that is I hired when I didn't have a real identity. So I was trying to shift and move the business around when I hired a Pakistani SDR for me full-time for my business doing outbound. And that was hard for him because we're trying to like figure this out together. And it's like hard to iterate when, I don't have a proven playbook for him to say, hey, call these people, say this thing, and book these appointments. So I had a Pakistani SDR. I tried some ads, my hand at Google Ads. I tried LinkedIn automation thing, and part of it, yes, could have been the people that I hired, but a lot of it was like I didn't have a real identity. And so for people out there, like you probably heard it before if you've been in the startup scene at all, but if you're a founder, no matter what your competency is, you should be running sales. I don't care if you're one of the engineers, like you should be doing some capacity of sales and doing as much of it as possible. Because when you have that idea and you're talking to people, you need to have the direct feedback to understand what is it that I say that causes them to hang up if I'm cold calling them? What is the thing I'm saying that makes them light up, that makes them lean in? And through those thousands of interactions, hundreds of interactions, you'll be able to figure out, oh, okay, I know where this product needs to go. And I know that when I say this, or when I offer this, or when I include this into the package, they say yes, and these deals close. That's the importance that even if you don't have sales skills, you need to run the sales, especially for a B2B service company, because you need to understand what your identity is. And that's going to be only through the raw feedback of running the sales yourself.
That's good.
My second thing I'd say that was just a huge mistake was trying to run two businesses at once. Now, I will say it was good in regards to it helped me understand what I liked and what I didn't like. And I was honest with myself to say, I'm going to kill one of these eventually within a few months. And I did that. But really, in all honesty, it's such a common thing for a founder to have shiny penny syndrome. It's so easy that when things are really hard at the beginning to want to jump ship to another opportunity, because it looks like, well, this would be so much easier if I did this idea. Because when you get smacked in the face and you go, oh, there's something here that I gotta really trudge through, whether it be your marketing, your product, your service, your advertising, something just isn't clicking. That's a really hard place to be. As you can see, it was a really iterative process and a very painful process because you're just wandering the wilderness, hacking away, trying to figure out like, where's my path here? I have no clue where I'm going. And it's scary. And it's like wading in the ocean and you're just trying to look for like a side of land. And you see, a lifeboat pass by, that's a new opportunity. And you're like, well, that looks better than where I am now. But you just realize like, you're just going to the same exact spot. You're going to experience the same exact problems, the same exact iteration, the same exact feedback where you're trying to figure things out. So it doesn't relieve any more pain. Just stick with the idea that you have. In fact, I would say that most businesses probably could get off the ground if people just stuck to it long enough.
Yeah.
And then the third one would be, like I mentioned, decision makers had pain. So I was getting a ton of feedback that was great, but they really had no buying power. Either the timing wasn't right, or like I said, they weren't able to admit themselves that they had a problem and that they could bring me in. So while the idea was good, the business model was not sustainable, at least for the current form in which I was trying to make it work with enterprises. So I should have probably gone down market. I should have probably, instead of going after large enterprises, I should have gone after startups, someone who recently raised funding and said, hey, saw you raise funding. You're probably launching a new product. This is what I do. But I really wanted to go after the enterprise clients because with the MVP side, if you get one enterprise clients, they'll throw a few million at a new idea. And so like you could be a 7-figure business tomorrow if I found one of those big whales of an enterprise company that wanted to launch and validate a new idea. But I should have gone down market and seen that as the opportunity for what it was.
Yeah.
And then the good. You'll probably hear this elsewhere, but use your networks for your first few deals. So ask around if you're starting your company and maybe you did this in like a corporate setting prior, like talk to other clients of yours. Maybe they know someone else. Like get out there and just have conversations with people in general, whether it be your neighbor or whoever, or a potential ideal client, or your cold calling, whatever it might be. talk to people, because you'll probably find your first deal or two through your network. And that's what we did with our first client, who's, again, still is paying today. The good is, again, we moved and iterated fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again,
You had to.
You had to.
Yeah.
Because I had to figure this out within 6 months. So we moved and iterated fast. That means we followed two things. We followed the cash, and we followed what interests us most. So the cash was clearly in the software engineering. Could we have built MVPs and launched them for people? Absolutely. And we probably could have created courses for non-technical founders who want to do that and stuff. Like there's enough money there, but it just wasn't interesting enough to, oh my gosh, listen to hours of people tell you their really bad idea and nod along like, oh yeah, this is really something. It's really painful. And we just got it more and more jaded, where we're like, hey, I think that this is too early. I think this is what you should do. And again, they mean well, but it was just a lot of tire kickers. And again, people who have good ideas and don't realize the cost of good software engineering. And so we followed the cash, where the cash was flowing readily, and that was businesses, and we really enjoyed the work, and we still do. And so we moved quickly and iterated fast. We found low-hanging fruit that was also cheap. So not only did we use our network to find our first few deals, but we used Hacker News. So again, that's like a job posting board all across the world for software developers. And we just unashamedly said, hey, this is Adam's background. We're a two-man shop. Like, this is what we focus on. And we, again, found the network bark.com, where we got on, and we're on a marketplace. And so we just found low-hanging fruit and just continued to get that scrappiness in. Let's get the first few deals. So there's really two things that I would say you should consider if you're launching a product or you're starting a business is do, the scrappy things. Like if you're starting a B2B service business, make the cold calls, do the door knocking, right? Like if you have a local presence in, Florida, Orlando, Florida, like go around to Orlando, Florida businesses, because they may not have a software engineering company that they know of. And again, right time, right place, you knock on the right door and someone answers the door and it's the business owner, and they actually do have a problem that you can solve for. Door knocking is, I think, going to have a huge upswing for those who give it a chance, because cold calling is becoming a lot harder these days. It's just oversaturated, and it seems like email is as well, and maybe even a lot of advertising is getting oversaturated. But you can really lean into your local presence if you offer a service and just door knock and talk to people. Another one would be on a marketplace. So I did this with my vegan creamer back in the day.
Yes.
When I launched that many ideas ago. But I had this idea and I found a marketplace to sell my product. So whether you're selling a product or offering a service, there's a lot of marketplaces out there that will allow you to get your first few clients, get your name out there, have some kind of presence on the platform. Because the hardest thing is, again, finding the person with the right time, right place, with the pain that you solve for. So if you can get on a marketplace where people are actively looking for those things, whether it be a service or, again, a product, like, can you be on some kind of crunchy marketplace, right? For me, I found a vegan marketplace that was like all vegan products, and I had a vegan creamer. So I put myself on that marketplace. Like, there's so many niched marketplaces. If you're selling a product, look to see, where does your tribe buy things? Where are those niche marketplaces? And that's the place that you should be. If you're on a service, try to figure out where your potential customer might search for your services and be on that marketplace. You might have to pay a little bit, and that's totally okay. It's usually worth it if you know how to work the leads. You can call quickly, you do good work, it'll come back. And you can even do the free things that are scrappy and a little embarrassing, like posting on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. Like, speaking of marketplaces, like, those are two marketplaces that you can own your local presence, like pressure washing or detailing or whatever it might be. Just enough people to get your name out there to get your first few clients. And so, yeah, that's the good of what I would have done differently, going from a 0 to 6-figure business in a few months. And now, hopefully, it'd be really cool to say a 7-figure business within our first year. Would be awesome.
Yeah, for that.
Any questions?
You did your homework, but I did not do my homework.
I mean, you were there. So the whole perspective of this podcast is not only that we're talking as two entrepreneurs in different businesses, but I think potentially some wives want to hear your perspective as a wife supporting an entrepreneur, because again, that's the whole point of this community is like, as a couple, it's not done in a vacuum. Like if you're an entrepreneur and you are launching a business, like that takes a toll on your family and your support system and your spouse who is supporting you through that.
Yeah.
So kind of what was your whole thought throughout this? Now kind of reading back through the timeline and in a very abridged version.
Yeah. For me, I feel like I hear a lot of wives are resistant to their husbands starting businesses because it's the scary unknown. But I think with our journey of going through all the layoffs, and that was already the scary unknown in a different way, and knowing that you made sure it worked out no matter what, you made sure you found something else. Like you made it your full-time job to make sure that it was going to be fine. When we entered this season, I had no doubts. Yes, it was scary, but it had been scary before. And I trusted you to make something happen and to make a wise decision. If it wasn't happening for whatever reason, that you were going to, find another job, another position somewhere else, and that we would be okay. And then also just the Lord proving to us, that he was going to also make sure things worked out. Just growing my trust in the Lord as well. So it was kind of that twofold of like, okay, like let's do it. I've seen you work under people, and I've seen you be in positions with so much more autonomy, and there's such a change in you and a difference that I knew that you thrive so much more in a either leadership position or just starting your own thing, that it was worth it to me to not stress and just say, all right, I know we're going to be okay. Something's going to work out. And I just have to trust that. Like, you're going to be smart and wise about it all. And, so I never had that resistance personally. And I know a lot of people do. And I think that resistance is totally valid as well, because
I was about to say you're a little bit of a unicorn, I feel like.
I don't know, maybe, but yeah, I think the resistance is valid. But at the same time, you proved yourself in other ways that I think that's why I had that confidence in you. Just your drive is so strong that I didn't have doubts.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think maybe passing it off to the viewer, something I wondered, maybe something you wondered, because you didn't imagine starting your own business in this capacity. I think for people who are out there and thinking, I want to start a business, but I'm not sure. A big question I had before I started my business was like, do I have it? Do I really have it? I mean, I think I do, but like, how do I know? How do I know whether or not I can start a business successfully? True. And I think it just comes down to, for me at least, I felt like, and I think you can attest to this, that I would work with these businesses. I set records at every company in some capacity. So I always worked really hard, no matter what the product was or how we were selling it or whatever it was. Like, I was always figuring out a way to set some kind of record. And so I had confidence in my skills, more importantly. And oftentimes the biggest frustration that I had is this, and what I would say to you is just, I wish people just get out of my way.
Yeah. Leadership was always in your way.
Yeah. So I knew that, I think my biggest skill was I had enough confidence to go, I had enough humility to say, I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I would work on what I could improve and get better at. And through that, there's enough competence. That confidence comes along to where it then just became, okay, if there's something that I could just nurture for years on end instead of being ripped out every 10, 12 months,
right,
if I could just nurture something that's mine, that I can grow and use my skills towards, and that I won't have any bottlenecks ahead of me who will get out of my way, then I know that.
Sounds so bad, but it's true.
Yeah. And the last company it helped enable me a lot, but it was just more of a lot of the other companies that I worked for. And so that came with some confidence to know, like, I can do this. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of how, in what capacity and what product. And I think that's for you as well, is what you need to ask yourself is like, do you have a skill that people value? If you do, then you have the confidence to do it. It naturally comes. Like, if you're an experienced welder who has the best welds, in the nation, or some of the top welds in the nation, because you've just been doing it for years, you're not going to question your ability to say, well, can I go out on my own? It's like, yeah, I mean, finding a client's going to be hard. Maybe finding a shop will be a little hard, but like ultimately you can weld. Like, you have no doubt in your ability that you can weld. And so if you have any transferable skills that you can put into a business, or you're launching something that you're taking your skills that are undervalued and putting it somewhere that's more valued, then if you have that experience, then there should be no question whether or not you could do this on your own, under your own capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that me and Sydney have gone through too. Again, like you said, like, I didn't know I was going to end up starting my own business. That was never on my own radar. So that was also a huge question for me, was, can I actually do this? Can I make a business work? And yeah, it was the same thing. I was confident enough in my skills of design and curating subjects and knowledge and interests in this world of holistic wellness that, yeah, we figured out the rest that we weren't super confident in. And even now we are still working towards being able to outsource the stuff that we're not great at as well.
Yeah.
So same kind of thing.
Yeah.
How are we on time?
Quite over.
Oh, what's that?
52 minutes, I think, right now.
Oh, man, we want to make this short, but
yeah,
there's so much
guys,
to
you might
say.
have to split this one up. So apologies. Any other questions then?
I just, yeah, I mean, you may have just talked about it already, but how was it for you? What was going through your mind as you're embarking on this journey with a family to support beneath you?
Starting a business and kind of going all in, putting your chips on the table with a family, like that is a different layer of risk. And it's not just me. I can't just live on my buddy's couch if things don't work out and get by at $400 a week and, part-time bartender or something like that. Like, that's just not in the cards. And so that's why I started this channel. Why we started this channel is because, like, your risk aversion is palpable. And that's probably the hardest thing that makes entrepreneurship as a parent hard, is because you're time limited and you're risk averse, and you're usually sometimes cash limited for most of you out there. At least for us, we didn't have ample cash to just throw at our businesses. Like, we had to make them profitable and making money. And so what was your original question?
What was going through your mind as you decided, okay, we're going to do this?
It's going back and forth, oscillating between this is going to be fine and I got this, and like kind of self-talk, to like, again, being overwhelmed by the chaos. Because again, it truly just feels like you're hacking away in a jungle and you're just trying to figure out, like, where am I going? You don't have any coworkers. You're on your own. Everything's on you. You're questioning yourself. Did I do what I was supposed to do today? Did I move the needle forward? Sometimes you don't even know, because it's just so abstract on what's the priority, because you don't even have anything to kind of point you in the right direction. And so that's why I would mention to you all, like, it's very chaotic. Know what you need to really prioritize, what moves your business forward, at least your idea, which is talking to people about your business, and doing some kind of selling capacity. Like, you need to own the selling, whether it be you have a product and you're just fulfilling the service and taking customer service stuff. Like, you need to own as much of your business as possible starting off, because you're not going to be able to outsource and hire on employees if you don't know what good looks like to begin with. And so that's what kind of provides that stability, is like, okay, I know what service I can offer. I know what the product is that I can offer. I'm confident in that. Then you just got to get out there. And so events are huge. Like you talked about, events in the B2B space, like go shake some hands, go do some door knocking, like go just talk to people about your product, because it's only a certain amount of time that someone's going to be right time, right place, exact thing that I'm looking for.
And more feedback.
To iterate. Right. And so that it's just such a mind game. Just like it's the same way I felt when searching for a job, when I had the layoffs. So it's just like, everything's gonna be okay. I'm gonna have this all figured out. This is just a small season. And then like an hour later, you'd be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? Like the self-talk only lasts for so long. So it's just chaotic. You're wandering through the wilderness, but
you never stopped.
But you never stop. You just keep going, and you keep iterating, and you do what you know you need to do to move the business forward, which is, again, just try to sell it, try to talk to people, get your name out there. That's the biggest thing, because there's plenty of successful businesses out there who just kind of operate on word of mouth. And why do they have word of mouth? Why do they get clients just based off people telling them about their service? Is because they've been around long enough and people know about it. And so when you're a youngin', even if you do a good job, like my company, like we don't really have much word of mouth, because again, it's very time oriented. These are 15, 10, 20 year investments. So the right time, right place, like the timing is very sparse, even with these business owners who know each other. And we haven't been around long. We've only been around since, goodness, like 9 months ago, 10 months ago. So like it just takes time. And that's the same thing when you're just selling your first product or first service. Just get your name out there, and eventually you'll find that first person.
Yeah. I think another question that would come to mind is, if you don't have an investment to pull from, how can you make something like this work? Either having another job, or like, what else could you do to float yourself until you're making enough to support your minimum budget?
That's a big fallacy, I would say, that a lot of people believe. And I'm not self-proclaiming to know everything, but here's just what I've seen from talking to a lot of people who have ideas in that season, and knowing a lot of successful entrepreneurs. You don't want to bet the farm. In fact, like what I did was really quite careless and really big financial burden that was risky. And I probably wouldn't have done it, in retrospect. Like that's a big risk and a lot of debt. And that's not fun to deal with if nothing works out. And so I talked to a lot of people who are like, man, I just need to quit my job and figure out a business in a few months. It's like, no. The best thing you can do, especially if you're a parent and aspiring parent entrepreneur, is like use your full-time job and then night shift whatever you can on the side to get your thing off the ground. Because if you can eat shit at the beginning and take it on the chin, on your product iteration and your product feedback, and refine it until it starts clicking and you're working full time, that's your safety net. And that's like, you don't want to bet the farm until it's too early, until it's like you have to. So the point in which you need to go all in on your business is like, it's right about at the point where it can cover your basic expenses. And you know that if you just quit your full-time job and gave full-time effort to this thing, that you could quickly make up that amount and make, if not potentially more. That's when you need to go all in and say, all right, I might have to eat it for a little bit. May not have to go out. I can't go out to eat for a little while, maybe a few months. But like, if I can just quit my job and really focus on this thing, I know that it's going to take off. So yeah, so use your full-time job as your like safety net. Keep it until you really feel like the thing is really validated, generating revenue and gaining a lot of steam. And then your only real option is to just dive in head first and to keep the momentum moving.
Yeah. I think that's great advice.
Thank you.
Well, I think we're pretty far into this episode. We should probably
Wow.
call it here, but thankfully we can do this for a long time. We have so much more to say and share.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. We're again asking for feedback here. Like, we have nothing to sell you. We're not an MLM couple. We don't want you to even buy our services or products necessarily, unless you feel so inclined. But we're not here to sell our products to you. We are truly here to try to support aspiring parent entrepreneurs and current entrepreneurs and hear like what you're dealing with. So if this at all resonated with you, we'd love to hear your comments in the comment section below. A like, subscribe would always be a great thing for us to just to see that, hey, people like this and want to see this.
We want to hone community around it.
Yeah.
Bring some of you on to the podcast
help
as well.
Answer questions, help you out, help mentor. If there's anything we can help anyone out with. But that starts with you guys engaging with the community. So we appreciate any comments. You can send an email to our email in the description below. We also have a voicemail that you could send a voicemail to if you prefer to do that. No one picks it up. It just goes straight to voicemail. You leave your question, and you might even be featured on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.